Friends, grab a cup of coffee because we are gonna make some of my favorite seasonal treats today. We're gonna start with a pumpkin donut rolled into cinnamon sugar, then poached pears. If you think that sounds boring, I'm gonna show you how it's absolutely delicious and the best way to enjoy a good pear. And we're gonna finish with pumpkin cheesecake brownies because brownies, cheesecake together. The leaves may not be changing quite yet behind me, but there's that little bit of coolness in the air and I know they're gonna change really soon, so let's get started. There is a prerequisite for the donuts, and that's having a donut pan. So as opposed to cutting donuts out and frying them, we're gonna bake donuts, and you need a donut pan. You can get many different types of them, different brands, but a donut pan, they're gonna be standard size, is going to be essential because that's what's gonna give us the donut shape we're looking for. Now this is pretty easy, and it's gonna start with the convergence of two wonderful things. Some melted butter, that's flavor, and a little bit of a neutral oil, an oil that doesn't have flavor. And that's just to make sure they stay moist and delicious. Think of your favorite pumpkin bread, favorite pumpkin bar. It has similar ideas to that. And then we're doing a mixture of sugars. We have some brown, light brown sugar and white granulated sugar. So we're gonna mix those right into here. Now notice, I'm gonna use a whisk. We're going back old school. I love this because it's so simple. Unlike creaming butter and sugar, we're not doing that. You just wanna mix it together. And then what we're gonna do is start adding egg one at a time, just because they mix more evenly when you can add one at a time. I cracked that egg awful, but it worked, so it's okay. So I am just gonna break it up and go each one, make sure it mixes in before adding the next. You can see it really changes when you whisk in the eggs. It kind of has a nice ribbon to it. It gets a little bit lighter colored. That's what we want. So now we have the dry ingredients. See how simple this is? So we're gonna add flour, all-purpose flour. And then we wanna add those warming spices that really make us think of the season. And yes, I usually always take off these little guards that have like the shaker on the spices. And of course, it's the one time I didn't because I put it in my coffee. So we're gonna add some cinnamon. Kind of get a nice dose. And you can switch these up if you have a personal preference that you like kind of a pumpkin pie spice difference. This is just the blend I like. We're gonna add some ground ginger, a little bit of fresh nutmeg, and yes, I do think fresh makes a difference in this case. You know, nutmeg can go kind of bad really quickly and lose its flavor. So a little bit goes a long way, and it lasts a long time when it's in the whole form. Put that right in there. And then of course we need a little bit of baking soda. So that's gonna help kind of give these nice color, gonna help them be just that right texture too. And then of course, always some salt. And I can see as I'm getting my salt, what did I forget? My vanilla. Usually go in with the wet, but it's fine to go in here with the dry. So we're gonna put a little bit of vanilla in, really drive home that flavor, and now just whisk it together. Now here at the very end, this is when I'm gonna add in my pumpkin too. You know, it really doesn't matter when you add in the pumpkin. It has a lot of water content in it, but really this is a nice kind of wet batter anyway. So I like to add it sometimes in with a little bit of my dry ingredients just to make sure nothing's gonna be over mixed. But once you get it in there, look what we instantly transformed into. A delicious pumpkin dessert, right? You can kind of tell. Now yes, these are donuts, you can have them for breakfast. I actually really like them too for any time, a snack, a dessert. But this is now your batter that we're gonna scoop it into the donut container, but I'm gonna show you how this pan, I have a special way I like to do it. I am gonna use a pastry bag because it just makes it a little easier. You can scoop and let it kind of self-level too. Pastry bag is just a little bit cleaner way of doing it. I fold it over, I fill it up. There's really nothing to it. Now it is, like I said, a wet batter. So you kind of wanna make a small cut on the bottom. So what I'm gonna do is, if you notice, just kind of ribbon it in right to the bottom. Now, the one thing you need to be careful with any donut pan is not to overfill it, because what happens when you overfill it, it will just become one big almost muffin and kind of encase that middle divot. So you want to fill it usually about 3/4 full. So I'm going to go around. If I need to add some more, I will. Now remember, these will grow too, but a couple wraps on the counter. If you have any drips anywhere and you don't want it to burn, you can kind of wipe them up. Now I only have one donut pan, so I'm gonna do these in batches. That's just how it works, because when it's a specialty pan, I just don't have a ton of them. But we're gonna bake these off until they're all done, then finish them up. Okay friends, we're pouring another cup of coffee. Do you know why? One, because it's good, but two, we're about to finish the donuts. I know you're excited too. So these have been obviously baked. This is my last pan. And you can see you want to be careful how you fill them because this one I filled a little bit more to show you. It's still fine, but it's just starting to encroach on that divot where you won't have as nice of center hole, which makes them look more like a donut. Now I always find it easiest just to invert them onto a rack. And I did, in all honesty. You always want to check, it depends on your pan how it's made. I did re-grease these with nonstick spray between the second and third batch. Now, you just want to check every time I wiped them out, just because I didn't want them to stick, obviously. But look at this. A donut without frying, without cutting it out into a donut shape. So to finish these up, you could do a few things. You know, sometimes people glaze, things like that. I just like a cinnamon sugar donut. These are obviously already pumpkin. So we have some sugar here. We're gonna put some cinnamon in it. So I'm just gonna add it right to the sugar and just stir it around. And instantly you have cinnamon sugar. That's all it is. So to finish these, what I'm gonna do is take a donut. Now you could do both sides, which is probably what I'm gonna do. And I'm just gonna dunk it in some butter that's melted. Look at this. And then dunk it right in the sugar. So when you're coating it, you can kind of turn it a few times to make sure because that warm butter mixture, but look at this. This is just like, you're gonna go apple picking, you're gonna get your favorite donut. I mean, if this doesn't get you ready for the season, what does? And then just set it down to cool or kind of like dry off slightly. They're all done and you can see they look like a beautiful donut. So imagine how fun this would be to give as gifts, to have when you're having people over, friends over, maybe kids after school snack, or just kind of to be everyone's favorite person if you make these. So now once you let them kind of cool off a bit or dry, they're easier just to handle. But look at this. They have that great sugar cinnamon crust. They have that soft interior, which honestly, it tastes like fall. The interior is so tender. It has just the right amount of pumpkin kind of spices to bring out those notes, but not overpowering. You still get the actual pumpkin flavor, which I like. They're just delicious. They're great to use kind of for entertaining. They're great for breakfast, they're great for dessert. Put a dollop of ice cream on this thing. This is honestly, to me, something you're gonna want time and again. You're gonna want a nice cup of coffee with it. Because that sugar cinnamon on the outside, that coffee that has a little bit of bitterness, it just works well together. So you need to make these because they're absolutely delicious and I know you're gonna love them. Fall's not over yet, we're just getting started. Next, let's make some poached pears, which might sound boring, but it's not gonna be. You know, it's a good day when you're opening a bottle of wine to do something delicious. So that's what we're doing, we're gonna poach pears. Now, poached pears kind of sound what? A little antiquated, why are they needed? But the thing is, when you poach a pear, you're adding this subtle flavor that slowly cooks the pear just a little bit to make it more tender, maybe a little bit more sweet, bring out kind of the best of the flavor. And it's really a great way to enjoy the season. So we're gonna start with our poaching liquid. We're just gonna get it ready and starting with some good rosé wine, something you'd like to drink, which I know if you don't enjoy wine, that's gonna be hard. So then you can use maybe a pear nectar, which you can buy at a grocery store too. And that's a great thing to use, or just ask someone that works in the grocery, like in the wine store where you're at or somewhere, what is a good rosé wine? Tell them what you're gonna do with it. A lot of times they wanna help. So I'm gonna be putting in, to start, my rosé. Smells so good. And we're gonna add a few flavorings to it. I like to do some cinnamon sticks. This is just gonna add a little bit more kind of flavor in those wonderful autumnal notes. Some whole cloves and a few whole cardamom pods. Now, the cardamom pods, sometimes I like to just take in my finger and just scrunch it slightly, or you can do it kind of on the work table a little bit. And that's just gonna release a little bit more because there's seeds inside. But this just is a nice subtle way to add some flavor without being too strong. So we're adding it right in there. I think this is kind of one of those things that it's a little bit of a lost art, poaching something like this, because it does add good flavor. I am cutting a beautiful vanilla pod in half. So I love to make my own vanilla, as you know. And then what I like to do is use the beans in different ways. Now, if you don't make your vanilla, that's okay. You can still use them and buy them and use them in different ways. But this just adds such a nice kind of flavor. Now, if you want, what you can do, let me open it up here for you. I didn't do the best job at cutting this one. I more mutilated it, but we'll get the idea across. Inside of it are thousands and thousands of these little seeds that have so much flavor that you can scrape And we're just gonna put everything though right in, and it will just kind of go into this liquid. Now to this too, a little bit of brown sugar. So this is again, just to kind of, it's not all going into the pears themselves, but it's gonna help just kind of give this nice subtle sweetness. So I'm gonna just set this aside while we get the pears ready. I love to use a good pear. If you have one that's in season, if you have one that's ripe on a tree, use that. If I don't, I'll get usually a red pear, just because it's something I like to go to. But Anjou pears are great, Basque pears are great. There's so many delicious pears. You just want a good pear. Now I'm gonna cut these in half. One half I will leave the stem on because I think it's a nice presentation. The other half I will obviously not have one on because it's really hard to cut that stem in half. Now what I'm doing though, you can see these are ripe pears. Poaching does work if you want to with a slightly underripe pear, but I think you're always gonna be better and have the most flavor from that pear if it is ripe. So what I'm doing to it though is I have a melon baller. I think this is the easiest way to nicely scoop out. See how you can just kind of get around that seed in the middle? You can scoop it out. And if you want to, if it has a hard stem, you can kind of just make a little bit of a V cut here. I don't usually find that you need to, but we'll do that here on one just in case you want to and think it has a little bit of that stem, you can just pull it out. But the melon baller, quick work. I'm finishing up the last one. And remember, pears do oxidize once they're cut, so you do kind of want to keep working. And I did cut out the stem in too. If there's kind of a bottom to that stem, I cut that out too. So I have some butter that is melting on the stove. And what I like to do for an extra step, because let's be honest, when you're making poached pears, it's not an everyday thing. You might as well make them as beautiful and as delicious as you can. So when that butter is melted, I'm gonna start adding these to the butter so they just begin to caramelize. You wanna caramelize the sugars that are already in the pear. So just spread that butter around, let it get a little sizzly, which it's starting to do. Because what I like to do is when it's like that, you see how it's just starting to sizzle over in there? That's the perfect time just to add in the halves. Hear that? Just a little bit, and that's what we want. These have been just slightly browning. I want to show you kind of how beautiful they can be. They get beautiful and just kind of golden brown. That's all we need. Now you have to be careful because like you can see here, I was just kind of marring that one up a little bit. But at that point, we're just gonna put them right into this poaching liquid and put them all in there. I'll pull it off the heat so they don't kind of keep sizzling as loud, but just gently set them in here. Now there's quite a few, so that liquid will keep kind of going up around them, which is exactly what you want. Now you want them to be mostly encompassed by the poaching liquid. Instead of adding more wine, we're just gonna add a little bit more water just to kind of cover them. And we want a very light poach here. We're not gonna be boiling them hard. We're not gonna be cooking them for a long time. We just want them to lightly poach. I'll cover them up and just let them go. Poached pears don't take long, and if they're super ripe or almost soft, you really don't wanna do them too long because that could make them get a little, it's nice to have a firm pear. But when they're done, if you could smell this aroma, it has notes of mulled cider, but completely different with the wine, which I really like. And this is now, if you want to, you can have them done ahead, put them in the fridge in the liquid, just to keep kind of bringing that flavor even more, so you can make them ahead, which I really like. I like to start with a nice dollop of yogurt, because I just think that's so delicious. And I think it kind of has a nice offset of having just a little bit of that kind of tang. I just like to use a Greek yogurt, so it has that thickness. And you can kind of prepare it however you want, you know? I personally love yogurt. I like the idea that it has elements of like a sour cream, but it has a little bit more sweetness to it than that. And I think the textures work really well, but it's also a great bed if you make it a little bit of a bed. So what I'm gonna do is now grab 1 or 2 pears. Now usually I like to do 2 halves together. If they seem extra wet, I like to just put them on a paper towel. That's just to dry it off. No, it's not that you have to be perfect about it. It's just that it's kind of nice, but look how you can kind of just nestle it in there. I like that. And then 1 with a stem. And again, if you want to get some of the extra drips. Now you can take this liquid, you could cook it way down, make it into a syrup. I think that's delicious if you want to. It's just kind of whatever you want to do. Look already at that. At this point, all you really need to do for me is put a little bit of a good granola on it. I use my homemade granola. So you might be thinking, is that breakfast? No, it can be dessert. Honestly, this can be a snack. What I like is the crunch of the granola with a little bit of that sweetness. It just works perfectly for kind of an autumnal dessert snack. You could do this for breakfast. I sure don't mind if you do. Or kind of anything in between. But this is now one of my favorite things to have because we don't get to enjoy pears enough. Think about it. We really don't. And this is a great way to just kind of go in They're tender. See how easily that cuts? Just beautifully. You can go in and you see the seeds of the vanilla bean right on it. It brings out the best of the pears. It really does. Growing up, we always did home canned pears when our tree did well. And this to me has elements of that, but a little bit more because it has even more flavor with all the other things we put in. It's a great fall dessert. It's a great thing to kind of feel like it's elevated, but guess what? It's not at all. And I hope you can see now that you can make it too, just as beautiful and just as easy. And now for the pumpkin cheesecake brownie. I know, it's two wonderful things in one pan, and it really is delicious and simple. We're gonna start with cream cheese. It's room temperature, but to make sure it's softened, I always like to take a mixer. You could do it by hand, but a mixer is easier, and just make sure it's creamy and smooth. To me, that just makes sure everything else works into it really evenly. So we're gonna add brown sugar. I am gonna scrape every so often while I'm doing this to make sure it incorporates, but you can see already how smooth and creamy that cream cheese is. That's what we want. Mix pretty much each ingredient in between to make sure it's evenly mixing. Followed by the egg. See, it's pretty simple, but you do just want to do it separately, especially that egg, and mix it in. So already it smells like cheesecake, which I love. Who doesn't? I know some people don't, but if you don't, maybe you love a brownie, so this will be your best option here. So I'm gonna scrape it, and what I'm gonna do is kind of just add everything else. So we have pumpkin, just pumpkin puree from the can. And the one thing I do like about the can is it's always consistent. You don't want the pumpkin pie filling, that's very different, and they sometimes look the same. You just want pumpkin puree. If you make your own, make sure to drain it slightly so it isn't too wet. I'm gonna put a little bit of salt in because everything should have some salt. And then we're gonna add a little bit of vanilla. Just think of making a cheesecake here. We're gonna put it right in there. And then those warming fall spices. So a little bit of cinnamon and a little bit of ground ginger, just to drive home the idea of pumpkin pie, pumpkin cheesecake, same thing. That's all it is. And so what we're gonna do, you can see it's a nice, smooth, but still kind of loose consistency, which is what we want. And you'll see why when we put them together. So I'm just gonna do a final couple turns, making sure everything is worked in, and then set this aside so we can make the brownies. I just melted the butter so we can make the brownie layer. Starting with melted butter, which is gonna have a nice saturation and give you that kind of gooey texture you want in a brownie. So we're gonna put it right into a bowl, and notice here, we don't need a mixer, which is really nice because you can do it all by hand. We have brown sugar and white sugar. Brown sugar is just white sugar with some molasses, also meaning it has more moisture content. So it's gonna give you more of that chewiness you want in a brownie. I'm just gonna whisk this together till it's combined, which you can see takes a few seconds. It's really super easy. So now we're gonna do that same process where we're gonna add the eggs. And I do like to add them one at a time again, just to make sure you're breaking each one up fully before adding the next. But look how quickly this is gonna go. With that last egg, I add in the vanilla. And you need vanilla when it comes to anything with chocolate, because it really brings out the notes of the chocolate. And so you might even need a heavy hand if you really like vanilla. I do. And instantly, it's starting to smell really good. So now we have the dry ingredients. Pretty simple. Cocoa, I like to use Dutch processed cocoa. It gives you that deeper, richer flavor and color. Make sure you get it all in there. Some flour. Now, this isn't a ton of flour because we want a fudgy brownie, but we are making a 9 by 13 pan size. We're gonna do a little bit of baking powder, just enough. And then we're gonna put in some salt. You always need some salt, don't even question it. And then I'm just going to use the tines of my whisk still, just to kind of start bringing it together so it doesn't get powder everywhere at first until I fully whisk it. So it doesn't take long. And then I like to clean off my whisk. You shouldn't lick it off because it has raw egg, but it is good. So we're gonna add in the chocolate chips. And these I like to fold in by hand, which is nice because you also wanna make sure everything is evenly mixed. So sometimes in the bottom of the bowl, and you can see you don't need an electric mixer for this, but here we go. We have chocolate on chocolate, and now we're gonna have cheesecake too. So to get this ready, after it's folded, I like to just get my pan ready. Now, usually I would do this early on in a recipe, but I wanted to do it with you. So I did cut a piece of parchment to fit as a sling, but that's because I want it to be easy to take out if I want to cut them all at the same time or have it look nicer. I am gonna put nonstick baking spray. You could do butter if that's what you prefer. This just kind of, to me, more usually ensures. And then I'm gonna put the parchment in. It will stick now, which is nice. And you can see I just slightly fold it over that side a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, just a little bit, because the brownie itself will hold it in too. And then I spray the parchment just enough to make sure nothing is sticking. We don't want anything to be sticking if it doesn't have to. So this is the process of, we want them to swirl somewhat nicely and pretty, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put about half of the batter in, and I always think it's easier when you're spreading a batter to put it kind of in dollops, if you will, or just kind of spread it out. See, I'm kind of spreading it out. And this way it's gonna have kind of an even layer in the bottom, somewhat of being brownie only, which I think is nice. We're gonna save roughly half for the top. What I'm gonna do this bottom layer is spread it out into an even layer. As you're spreading, holding onto the parchment just a little bit is gonna help it not move as much. Once it's kind of worked out to the edges and the brownie is touching that brownie batter, the edges, it won't pull on that parchment as much. But you can see it's pretty quick here because it's a nice batter. So once it's all spread out, I take the cheesecake layer and in one swoop, put it on top. So at first it doesn't look like it's gonna be swirled at all, but we'll talk about how we're gonna work with that. You can see the cheesecake layer is rather soft, so it levels and spreads fairly evenly. So I'm just gonna take my spatula, just spread this out. Again, nothing too perfect, but honestly it spreads out really easily, so it pretty much is perfect. And what we're doing here now is going to put the dollops of what we have left on top. So I wanna make sure I save. And if you get some of the chocolate now in the cheesecake, that's okay, because we're going to be swirling them together. So I'm gonna take now a cookie scoop, just a little bit easier than something else, and I'm gonna take some dollops and start just kind of placing them around. It doesn't have to be perfect, because there's really no rhyme or reason other than we wanna be able to make some swirls. For the final one, I like to just make sure I get this all cleaned out. Otherwise, it's way too tempting to lick that bowl out, and you know we all love to do it. With the raw eggs, we shouldn't do it, but we sure do want to. So we're going to just make sure we get all of it out. And again, you can see, nothing's perfect here. It doesn't look too pretty, it's not too precious. But what we're gonna do is now take this table knife I'm holding, and I'm just gonna insert it all the way down to the bottom where I feel that. And I'm just gonna start kind of swirling. Do you see what I'm doing? It's pulling this brownie into swirls. And you might think at first, well, they're not that pretty. When they bake, they become prettier, I promise. And you wanna do it enough that you really see the swirls. I think a mistake it's easy to make is to think, okay, I did it a little bit, I'm gonna stop because I don't wanna mix it too much. But you want it mixed enough that you really start seeing it, because otherwise it won't really work out as a swirl. And now, see how it's all kind of like melded together? Now we're gonna put it in and let it bake. I took the brownies out of the oven, and you can see, look at that swirl, how it looks beautiful. Now I've let them cool a little bit. They're still a little bit warm. I'm just gonna make sure the sides here are not sticking, which they're not. But you can see, you can leave them in the pan if you want. I think it's just kind of nice to be able to, in one fell swoop, take them out if you want to. And look how pretty they are. This is what I love about them. There's, to me, such a beautiful, beautiful brownie. I'm just gonna cut myself a nice size piece. What I like about these is they're kind of in between a fudgy and a cakey brownie, because they're definitely super moist, like a fudgy layer of them. But look, you get the melted chocolate from the chocolate chips. You get that beautiful cream cheese layer. They're really good. What I like is, if you're thinking pumpkin, spices, cheesecake, does that go with chocolate brownie? Yes, it does. What's nice is the subtlety of that pumpkin cheesecake with just a hint of spice. It's not overpowering, it's not kind of like fighting. It's just perfectly going with that beautiful chocolate flavor too. These two really do. They go so well together, and they're just really, to me, they're one of those special things that people come back to time and again and say how delicious it is, how special it is, how unique it is, but also how easy it is. So I hope you can see here, this is one of the easiest things you can make this fall, autumn, that's gonna put you in the mood for the season, but also satisfy that craving. Today we made so many fun things for a great season. So if you're ready for the fall season and you're wanting to make some delicious baked goods to go along with it, we have the pumpkin donuts and a cinnamon sugar. It's just like the perfect treat, and look how great and portable they are. We have, of course, pumpkin cheesecake brownies. You know, what's so fun about these is they're a little bit different. They're still something everyone's gonna love, and they're kind of that classic go-to that you're gonna want time and time again. And then for something a little bit more unique that maybe you don't have all the time, the poached pears. And on top of that, yogurt with a little bit of granola. This seriously is something special that so many people will enjoy, and they don't have to know how easy it was. So all these things are great ways to enjoy the season, to enjoy some of the best ingredients of the season, and just have a great time making them. So I hope you can see how easy it was so you can make them too, and share this video around so everyone else can make them just like I did here, because it really is that easy. All the recipes are in the description of the video. They're also on my website, wyseguide.com, where you can go back time and time again to get all your seasonal favorites.